the origin of the House of Morgan or JP Morgan is in the city of London. Uh, they actually came about as a result of the death of George Peabody, who was a major American banker in the city of London. When he died, he didn't have any heirs. He left the business to Junius Morgan, who was JP Morgan's father. And on page 11 here, I'm going to read about a really interesting incident that I think shows why JP Morgan and indirectly the financial system in the US is beholden to the city, maybe only up until now. Monday, March 3rd, 2025, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, today we're going to look at whether President Trump has learned the lesson of the past and is not going to fall for the trap that President Wilson fell into that brought the United States into World War I in 1917 and has led the United States into the path of empire and to where it's now, where it's overstretched itself so much. And we're also going to look at whether this is all related to the city of London. Yes, the city of London, I think, is a lot more powerful than most people think. So, before we go further into that, I just wanted to give a shout out to one of our great affiliates, and it's Dirty Man Safe. So, what is Dirty Man Safe? Well, it's underground safe solutions to store your valuables like gold, silver, coins, documents, and even crypto wallets. If you're into that, it's hidden protection, instant access. So, I've got a link below in the description. If you click on that, you'll get 10% off if you order a product from Dirty Man Safe. And you also get a small special gift from them. So let's go back to President Trump and whether he's trying to avoid falling into the same trap as President Wilson. So, what trap did President Wilson fall into? Well, there were two traps, really. It wasn't just World War One. In my opinion, it was signing the Federal Reserve Act into law. And I think he made a statement, actually, which I'll try to find and put it up here, that he greatly regrets signing that act into law, the Federal Reserve Act. He was warned by many people, one of them being Charles Lindbergh, Sr., who said a central bank or Federal Reserve System would be the biggest money trust ever in history. And I think Mr. Lindbergh was correct. He was a congressman from Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. His son, of course, was the famous aviator who flew across the Atlantic solo. I think it was in 1927. So that was the first trap, the Federal Reserve. And why do I think that was the first trap? Well, because if you read The Creature from Jekyll Island and other books about the Federal Reserve, the bankers in London and New York, yes, they needed a central bank in New York because the United States was becoming more and more powerful economically and trade-wise. And I think the British as well, they were looking to neutralize German economic maritime power. Germany, don't forget, had only been a united country since 1870 or thereabouts, 71, I think. And it was growing massively. And I don't think the Germans wanted to rule the world, but the British were paranoid. So they were working even before the Federal Reserve to neutralize the Germans. And I think creating the Federal Reserve was going to be a way to siphon off the hard-working capital from the American public. And World War One, of course, I spoke a bit about World War One in my Sunday video yesterday. You can have a listen to it. I'm going to put it up no here in the cards. By the way, we're going to have the live stream tonight, Monday, 8 p.m. London time. We couldn't do it yesterday. It wasn't possible, and I apologize. But yes, so the Federal Reserve was very important. So World War One, back to World War One. That's what I wanted to talk a little bit about. We get to 1916, and the war was a stalemate. No one was really making any progress. They're stuck there in the trenches, and the best thing that could have happened, and I think the Germans even proposed this. I mean, you could correct me, but from what I understand is they wanted a peace deal and they wanted to go back to the pre-1914 status quo, and that was it. But then came the Balfour Declaration, which was a banker's document, really. It was written by Lord Rothschild on behalf of Lord Balfour, who was, I think, the foreign secretary or at the time, or he was in government in the UK. And it said it promised that the UK would eventually help create a homeland for the Jews in Palestine. And in 1917 as well, of course, Lord Allenby conquered Palestine and conquered Palestine from in the Middle East, the area, from the Ottomans. So what's that got to do with things? Well, I think that was the deal. The New York and the London bankers, they decided to keep financing the war and bring in the United States. And what they got back was this Balfour Declaration adoption by the British. Yes, it took over 30 years to eventually get the creation of the State of Israel. And here I'm just talking about facts. I'm not judging anything. This is just a way some people see it. And so what's going on today? Well, I think President Trump has realized that for over 100 years, America has been hijacked by the powers in the city of London. And by that, I don't mean all British people. I mean the elite here. It's the same people that want to keep fighting the Russians in the Ukraine. They don't want peace because it ruins all their efforts. They thought that with President Biden, they could go and provoke Russia and get Russia, put all these sanctions on Russia, and that Russia would be on its knees after a year. But here we are with a new president who doesn't see eye to eye with the globalists and the City of London gang, and they're cornered, and that's why they're so desperate. And there were a meeting yesterday in London, and it's crazy. It sounds crazy that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister here, wants to send troops to Ukraine. He's written another loan, 2.6 billion pounds to Ukraine for 5,000 missiles. Doesn't like he wants peace. And I'm gonna now go back to history. And a lot of you know that I worked in the city of London. I mean, the first time I came here in terms of work was in an internship as an intern for a Eurobond trading company in 1989. And then I went back to Switzerland, worked there for 2 years, and came back to work in 1992. Of course, I had no inkling or idea. I hadn't really studied history of what the city of London was all about. I just thought it was one of the major financial centers, but I didn't realize how much control it had. And it's ironic, though, that before I came to London. I had actually already read this book, The House of Morgan, The Secret History of Money and Power. I highly recommend it. I think they've changed the title of this book. This is from the late 80s. Uh, and why do I bring this up? Well, because you might understand why the City of London is so important. And what's it got to do with the House of Morgan? Well, the origin of the House of Morgan or JP Morgan is in the City of London. Uh, they actually came about as a result of the death of George Peabody, who was a major American banker in the City of London. When he died, he didn't have any heirs. He left the business to Junius Morgan, who was JP Morgan's father. And on page 11 here, I'm going to read about a really interesting incident that I think shows why JP Morgan and indirectly the financial system in the US is beholden to the city, maybe only up until now. Maybe that's why uh, President Trump, I'm speculating here, that's why all the gold in the city of London is being brought back to the United States. But anyway, uh, I read this book over 30 years ago, and I went through this section, but I didn't think much of it. And why? How did I find out about it? Well, when I met the Gnome of Zurich in November, he told me that JP Morgan had been bailed out by Bank of England and the Rothschilds in 1857. And I thought, how do you know that? And he said, well, someone that worked for JP Morgan told me about that. And then I went through this book and I found it. So here we go. It's on page 11. It says, then in 1857, it looked as if Morgan would be denied his promised fortune. Wheat prices tumbled with the end of the Crimean War. Those wars, Crimean War, Ukraine. I mean, history doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes, right? Causing hardship for American banks and railroads. By October, New York banks stopped gold payments. Well, that's what the Bank of England is doing now, preventing American correspondents from transferring funds to Peabody in London. He was suddenly overextended on his American bills or American investments. At the same time, London investors sold American securities, siphoning more funds from Peabody and provoking a serious cash squeeze. Rumors raced through London that George Peabody and Company was about to fail, a prospect heartily relished by rivals who disliked the old American. And another interesting thing, when you go into the city of London now, right by the Bank of England, there's a Royal Exchange. And outside the Royal Exchange, there's a big statue of a man sitting on a chair. And guess what? That's George Peabody. Anyway, Morgan had also earned the displeasure of Barings by aggressively cutting prices on American securities and trying to steal their accounts. Now the major London houses told Morgan they would bail out the firm, but only if Peabody shut down the bank within a year. When Morgan relayed this uh, patent blackmail to Peabody, the older man reacted like a wounded lion. Defiant, he dared them to bring down the firm. George Peabody and Company was saved by an emergency credit line of £800,000 from the Bank of England, with Barings as a guarantor of the loan. The vengeful Peabody, who felt Barings had mercilessly pressed him to pay outstanding bills, asked that the name of the firm be stricken from a published list of banks rasking the firm. For Peabody, who had just made a resplendent return to America after a 20-year absence, the incident confirmed his innate pessimism. It is not yet 3 months since I parted from you and left country, the country prosperous and the people happy, he wrote his niece. Now all this gloom and affliction. So it says the 1857 panic made a deep impression on Morgan's 20-year-old son, Pierpont J.P. Morgan, who had just started on Wall Street as an unsalaried apprentice at a Duncan Sherman and Company, New York agent for Peabody. So I'm going to stop right here. So London, that's one of the reasons why it's so important. There's another interesting book called The Empire of the City, The Secret History of British Financial Power, E.C. Knut or Knut. I highly recommend that. It's not very long book, very interesting. And now back to Trump. Of course, we don't know exactly who's bringing all this physical gold into the United States. One of the LBMA members, major bullion house, Stone, I think Stone FX or Stone X, theirs and Bullion Vault have said that about 2,000 tons have gone to the U.S. I suspect it could be the U.S. government. It could be a big investor, but like Warren Buffett, or it could be people worried about the geopolitical situation. Like Greenspan has said, in times of war and uncertainty, people don't accept paper. Only gold will do as payment. And by that, I don't mean in the shops. I mean internationally between nations and big corporations. So, um, and we need to look as well, maybe a little bit at Trump's background, because his mother was born in the Isle of Lewis, which is in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. Her name was Mary Ann MacLeod, and then became Mary Ann MacLeod Trump. Why is that important? Well, President Trump professes well, he says that his mom was very fond of the Queen and that she liked the royal family. But if we think about it, she was a Scot, not really English. And there's another book here that's really good about the war, the Nameless War, by a former MP who was actually imprisoned during World War II because he tried to tell the public that it was going to be another bankers' war, right? World War II, and Churchill put him in prison. But he writes about the English Revolution and then the creation of the Bank of England in 1694. And on page 17, he says, the political and economic union of England and Scotland was shortly afterwards forced upon Scotland with wholesale corruption and in defiance of formal protests from every county and borough. The main objects of the Union were to suppress the royal mint in Scotland and force her upon her to responsibility for the national debt. The grip of the moneylender was now complete throughout Britain. The danger was that the members of the new joint parliament would sooner or later, in the spirit of their ancestors, challenge this state of affairs. So Scotland, the Scottish people, were not happy that they were forced to give up their mint. And why is that so important? Well, because this is the mint, of course, is run by the the monarch or the government in Scotland, the Queen or King, and the public can come and bring their gold and silver and they mint the coins. And the reason why the government does it is because the government is supposed to be credible and supposed to be honest and keep honest weights and measures. It's not that the government mints the coins, and it's not theirs either. And some people think that it is theirs, but I've got a book here that was sent to me by one of the viewers, and I'd like to thank him again about this concept. Back in the 14th century, this was already applied. That yes, the function of the prince or the monarch is to provide a service to the subjects, to mint the money. And that's what Nicholas Orez said back in the 14th century. And it's been the custom since then. So for those of you who think they have the right to confiscate our money, that is not so. But what happened basically in Scotland and in England in 1694 is that the power of the people to have their own money minted by the king or the queen was taken away. And basically, up until now, we have to accept the the debt-based money or currency created by the central bankers. And and the only way to keep the system going is with the national debt. And do you remember recently? I remember President Trump said he wanted to obliterate the national debt. So I don't know. I just thought it would be interesting to cover this topic. So right now it's 9:07 a.m. London time, so we can have a quick look at the markets, see where they are. So we've got spot gold at 28.69, up about 11 bucks. The high's been 77, the low's been 52. We've got spot silver at 31.35, that's up 21 cents. High's been 42, the low 31.09. The Dow futures is down 53. Nasdaq is up 100, is up 20. S&P is virtually unchanged at 59.50. I saw on Friday the markets weren't looking very good, but they rebounded towards the end. Maybe uh, it was oversold and people covered their shorts, took some profit. But I think the trend doesn't look very good. So to the currencies now. Well, the pound and the euro are a little stronger this morning. They're up a quarter and a third of a percent respectively. Dollar is also weaker versus the yen, down 0.4 of a percent. In terms of other commodities, WTI crude is down half a percent at 69.20. High grade copper is unchanged. What about the 10-year yield, the US Treasury market? Let's quickly have a look. Well, the 10-year yield is unchanged at 4.23. So, with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.